So resilience, what is it? What does it mean? And how can we be resilient in the modern world we live in? Now resilience is a wonderful thing to have, but not all people have it. I would say that I've certainly got some resilience, and I certainly have mental toughness, which we will talk about in this video. So this is again a part of my mental health videos, because it's okay making fun content, it's okay making content about the biking times, but I also think that we have to be responsible and talk about some of the bigger subjects in the world. So resilience, what is it, what does it mean, and how can you be resilient? Now somebody once told me that resilience is very much like an elastic band. It gives and it stretches, but yet it will always go back to the same shape. And I love that idea of resilience being elastic band, or being the same kind of a thought process of elastic band, and it is. It's about bouncing back. We go through moments in our life, whether it's you may lose your job, whether it's bereavement, which I've certainly been through in my life. Recently, 2 years ago, losing my father. So again, I felt quite low, part of the natural process of going through that. But I bounced back, I got better. And of course, having a channel like this really helped. And having a really good audience and a real good fan base, because you guys fundamentally are my family. So resilience is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we can all achieve it, and we can all teach ourselves to have resilience. It is about not giving up. It is about fighting on. As I often say to people in life, I often use the phrase, battle on, keep battling. And I think that's a very old phrase indeed, because life is a battle. We go from little tiny wars to little big battles, and you come out of it, hopefully, in a positive light. And you've won the battle, you've won the fight. And I don't mean a physical fight, I mean more of a mental challenge. But yes, some things in life can also be quite physical, especially if you've got illness or you're not very well. So resilience is a wonderful thing, and I do love it when people have resilience. But what is mental toughness? As I already mentioned that. Well, mental toughness is, again, it is about having that capability within your mindset of not giving up. Because too many people give up. It's a bit like the old story of somebody trying to be successful, and you can relate this to YouTube and content creation. How many people have made content and given up after 5 videos, or 10 videos, or 50 videos? Well, if we keep being tough and we keep pursuing what we're believing in our dreams, that 51st video or your 6th video might be the one that takes your channel to a much bigger audience. So it's about perseverance, it's about not giving up, and about battling on, but not just in a physical sense, but also in a mental sense, in a psychological sense. Having that mindset that says, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to pursue my dreams. I'm going to, if you want to learn a craft, if you want to learn to play the guitar, it takes time. It takes a lot of practice. But you get there by having that resilience of not to give up. And sometimes, in a relationship, for instance, some days, you may be in a relationship which is falling apart, and you get into the stage where you're moving on, and it's not about giving up, it's about moving on. So that is another form of resilience. And of course, heartache and having your heart broken can be quite devastating, and I've certainly put my hand up. I've had my heart broken a few times in my life, but I get up and I do something, and I use that knowledge that I'm not a weak person, and I don't give up easily. I'm stubborn to a certain degree, and I think being stubborn is great, because it can also be a hindrance at certain times in your life. And I apologise to anybody I've been stubborn to, but that's just the way I am. Yet again, it's about not giving up. And then emotional strength, because we all go emotional things. We all have different levels of emotion. Whether it could be you're losing a job, you've been sacked, you've been made redundant, whether it's a breakup, whether it's bereavement, whether it's because you try to achieve something and you not achieve what you want to do. For instance, you could be taking a degree and you fail your degree. But there's nothing to stop you from having another go, from retaking those exams and so forth. And actually, with that extra knowledge, you'll get there. Again, it's about not giving up. It's about being strong inside, but also being strong physically and mentally. If you have those two things, and when I mean being strong physically, I don't mean you've got to go down to the gym and have loads of muscles. It's just having that ability to carry on. I mean, we often hear about these stories of the Wild West, when these men in America, and women as well, we often forget about the Wild West women. But, they have to go and travel 500 miles on their own, go through wilderness and mountains to get back to civilization so they can be helped. but something keeps them going. And so many accounts. One instance is Jebediah Smith, where he had to keep on going when he was in the wilds of America. So he was trying to get to civilization, and they was running out of water. And he was with two other friends, and one of them got to the point where he could not walk anymore due to not having any water and dehydration. So they did something really crazy, which they buried him in the ground up to his neck in soil so the sun would not penetrate and get too hot. And Jebediah and his friend went to go and find water, and luckily, being wild mountain men, they knew in the distance they saw some greenery, and they realised that is a water source, and they managed to find the water. And then they got back to the friend, and the friend drank a massive kettle of water and recovered instantly. So again, throughout history we've had this resilience of not giving up, of having to march and walk for hundreds of miles, and I think that's incredible, and we can't forget these people in our past, because that's our heritage. Whether you're European or whether you're American or wherever you may be in the world, there's always been tales of people that have not given up. So how do you be resilient? How do you learn to be resilient? Well, I would say from a young age, don't give up. Keep fighting. And I don't mean, like I said, a physical fight, I mean the mental fight, because often these trying moments in our life are mentally very challenging, and of course they can also affect you very much so in a physical sense. So you learn resilience by fighting on, by not giving up, by not quitting. And I've seen this in my life with friends who, have quit. They have run away from their problems. And what do they learn? So if you get two people, you get one person that runs away from the problems, and you have another person that stands firm and makes a firm stand and addresses the problems and moves forward in a positive light. That individual will learn how to be more resilient than the person that runs away. So if you find yourself in a situation and you're burying your head in the sand, hiding away from your problems, don't. Face them full on, because that will make you a stronger person and a stronger character, and it will develop that personality to being stronger and not giving up. So don't give up is the little lesson there. But how do we also bounce back? Because it's okay saying be resilient, but some days some people will have depression and various other ailments, and it's very, very hard. So you get help. You speak to your friends and your family. You go to your doctor and you get help in that situation. Maybe you need counselling. Maybe you just need a bit of support. And some days you have to slow down in life, look at the bigger picture and put yourself first. If you're a bit like me, where you put other people first in life, some days you have to learn that tough lesson of saying, well, no, today, I'm at the moment in my life, I'm going to put myself first, because putting other people first and putting me last is going to get myself in a worse situation. And I've had to learn that lesson. And it's great to help people, but some days you have to help yourself first. So don't forget that as well. And then adversity, being adverse, being that wonderful being who can adapt to your situation. Because in life we learn the lessons in life and we learn to adapt. So if you can do that in life, if you could learn to adapt, if you could learn to adjust your situation and shift your focus, then that's going to make you more resilient, and that's just marvellous and great. So how do we overcome the challenges? Because life is a challenge, life is a lesson from one lesson to the other, and some of these learning lessons in life are going to be quite harsh. For instance, bereavement is a tough thing to get over. Losing your parents, losing a loved one, that can be very tough. It really can. It can knock you back for six. And it can take a good while, a good few months, even a few years to get over. From a personal perspective, I've probably not yet really got over the death of my father, to a certain degree, because I've battled on and I got to deal with that down the line. But that's just me, myself. But I'm aware of that, and being aware of your situation means going forward, I'll adjust, I'll learn, and I'll become more resilient to what I've been through myself personally. And it's never nice. That is a part of life's journey, is losing your loved ones. And I've certainly lost friends very suddenly who have passed away, and it's devastating, it's heartbreaking. But at the same time I think to myself, well, if there's a higher place out there where people go, is it the end of the journey? Maybe not, maybe it is. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So overcoming your challenges, take your challenges in life as a challenge. See it as a fun adventure and learn from that process, and you'll become a stronger and a more courageous individual, because having courage, again, is a wonderful thing to have in life. And if you can find a bit of courage, you'll find more courage, because courage breeds courage, it really does. And so many people throughout history have found their courage. It's in here and it's in here. So do find your courage. And then psychological resilience on a more mental level is another amazing thing to have. And again, we achieve that by not running away, by facing your problems and putting your hand up, when you need help and support. Because it's great trying to deal with things on your own, but some days it can be very, very challenging to deal with things on your own. Who do you talk to? Where do you go for advice? So surround yourself with good friends and good family. From a point of view for myself, being somebody very much into the Norse and Viking way of life, I like to think of myself having a little war council. And I don't mean a council of people are going to take to war. I just mean in the sense of people who I trust and who I can turn to and speak to and get that advice. But it's also important in life that we also listen to that advice, and sometimes you have to take that advice if it feels right. But it also, on the other hand, if it doesn't quite feel right, don't take that advice. But also be prepared to go back and listen to that advice again, because it's great following your heart and following what your instinct says, but it's not going to get the path right every time. So building resilience is done by living of life's trials, and life is a learning process from one day to the next. So take advantage, become stronger, and you'll find yourself in a really good position. And then also, it's about mindset shift, or shifting your focus is the phrase I'd like to use. So when you shift your focus or you shift that mindset, you're adapting to your situation so that you can handle and deal with it better. So for instance, if you're feeling a bit down, you keep yourself busy, you try to think happy thoughts. I mean, there's an old saying in life, if you think unhappy thoughts, you're going to get an unhappy result, and you're going to be unhappy. So use that power of your thinking and your mind, think of happy times in your life, and there'll be a massive benefit to that. And that's true. And I've seen people, and I've said to people, if you go in your past and you think about your sad time in your past, you're going to feel sad, aren't you? But if you remember the positive times, the good times, and you use that energy, use that positivity, that will help you to get through this journey. And it's so important that you never give up, because never giving up means you become more resilient and you build that strength and courage. And so many young people struggle in life from day to day, and I've seen it personally in my own eyes. So learning resilience, being mentally tough, having that emotional strength to carry on will get you through tomorrow's problems. And as I always say to people, today is today, tomorrow is another day, and next week is another week. With a positive thinking, things will improve for you. So never give up. I'll then comeback stories. I mean, I've got so many of these in my life, as my phone goes, where I've had problems in my life, but I've always come back. And at times, 90% of the time I'm up here, I'm really on a high, I'm really happy, and I'm content, I'm happy with who I am. But occasionally, I'm down here, and you need those days, or at least I think I do, just remind me that, I'm not perfect. I'm going to have days when I don't feel so good, but 99% of the time, I'm going to have the opposite, and I'm going to be up here. And I use that energy when I'm feeling down on negativity to try to turn it into a positive and look on the bright side of life. And it's easy saying that on camera, look on the bright side, but it's true. If you look on the bright side, you'll make yourself feel so much better. And then inner strength, that comes from your spirit, from your soul, and what makes you, you. And we all have this ability to have this inner strength, this inner stubbornness of never giving up. I mean, how many people have failed because they gave up too quickly? Again, comparing it to content creating, how many people have given up creating content? And they may make some of the best content in the world, but because they've had a negative experience, because they may have a few trolls on the channel, because they've had videos not being successful like they think they are, they gave up. So never do that. Keep battling on. But make sure you're doing it for you as well as for your audience. Because if your heart isn't in what you're doing, then have a think about what you're doing and take your time to think as well. Because too many people make rash decisions too quickly. Now, when I have a problem, I like to think about it. I like to dwell, and I like to take my time. Even if it's a few hours, a few days, or a few weeks, or even longer, I will take that time to think, and I'll give myself that time. Because doing that will just give me that ability to move forward in a positive manner. And at the same time, I'm reinforcing my subconscious psyche and my subconscious soul saying, yeah, I'm adapting to this situation, and therefore, thusly, I'm going to move on and adapt in a positive light and create more positivity. Because you could choose in life to be positive, or you could choose in life to be negative. Well, we all know what the negative result is going to end up in. So be positive. Always take the positive out of the negative and get rid of the negative, and then you end up with nothing but positivity. And it's such a wonderful thing to have. Growth mindset. And again, this is about understanding who you are and moving forward with that positivity, learning that life lesson and taking what you learned, so the next time you make a mistake, you don't make it again. Now, one thing I often told people is when you make a mistake, how many people, curse and say, oh, you stupid idiot. Well, you shouldn't do that. You should say, well, next time I will make things better and do things differently. Because if you curse yourself and you create that negativity around making a mistake, all you're doing is reinforcing the negativity. So make a mistake, look at the positive and say to yourself out loud, I will do things better next time, because that's reinforcing your subconscious and your consciousness to adapt, to learn, because every day is a learning lesson, and the better we can force ourselves to be more positive, the better the results are going to be. And you're going to have a wonderful life if you do that. And then thriving under pressure and under stress. I mean, how many people are in a job they don't like and they're under stress? But as I said before, stress is a vicious circle. You stress over something, you create more stress for the stress you're stressing about, and then you begin to stress over the thing you're stressing about, and then it goes round and repeats, and then the circle gets bigger and bigger. So stop that and try not to stress, and try to just shift your focus to something else when you're stressing and find the solution. It's problem, reaction, solution. You've got a problem, you react to your problem, but if you can find a solution to your problem, your reaction is going to be more positive the next time, and you're learning something positive and moving forward in a positive way. And then also turning pain into power. And again, let's talk about bereavement. That's a very negative thing to go through for most people. Whether it's losing your wife or husband or your children even, which I can't imagine ever going through that. I can't imagine what that's like at all. But I can certainly understand about losing friends, and I can certainly understand about losing parents. And so you turn that pain into a positive thing, because you remember the good times. Because nobody that's ever passed away on you wants you to be sad, really, do they? They want you to remember the good times, the laughs, the smiles, the holidays, the jokes, but all those happy, positive family memories you've got, or memories of your friend. And if you really are struggling, do get counselling for your bereavement, because that will also help you a lot in life. And some days you have to put your hand up and ask for help. And knowing when to do that and not hiding yourself away will just cut the problem in half and help and make you deal with that problem. Because it's all right hiding away and burying your head in the sand, which is an old saying. But again, you're creating a vicious circle, because you bury your head in your sand, you hide away, you're still burying your head, you're ignoring your problem, and it just comes back round again and again and again. So try to deal with it, and try to find that time for yourself to deal with it as well, and talk to your friends, get support. And then rising above, looking at things from the bigger picture, which is probably easier said than done. But what do I mean by that, looking at the bigger picture? Well, it's about taking a step back in your mind and thinking about the whole process, the whole thing you're stressing about, or whatever's going in your life, and looking how you would deal with it if it wasn't you yourself. And it's a wonderful thing to achieve and to learn, is to rise above, to look down on your problems, because then things do become a little bit simpler, and you can also move forward in a positive light. And then again, we have trauma recovery. Naturally, that's something I've been through in the last few years. First of all, with losing our channel host Egil Thorson, which really was a shock. Even though on a subconscious level, I think I knew it was going to happen, but it was. And it still is a shock today that Egil passed away so quickly. But on the other hand, with my late father, well, it was inevitable with his disease he had, of Alzheimer's and all the other problems he had. So my dad wasn't going to live forever. So on the one hand, with my friend Egil, it was a shock and I wasn't prepared for it. And it still is a shock today. But at least we're honouring him on the channel by remembering his memory. And then, on the other hand, with my late father, it wasn't a shock. Even though it was a shock at the time, it was sudden, but I kind of knew it was going to happen. And I just wish he lived a bit longer, that was all. So, yes. And again, we've got to talk about dealing with stress. You deal with it by keeping yourself busy, talking to friends, and not letting that vicious circle of stress catch you and take over your life. And stress is a very bad thing for your health because it's negativity, pure negativity. So again, don't create this vicious circle. When you begin to stress about something, you begin to stress over the stress because it will just continue and it will get bigger and bigger until the day you actually deal with it. And some people have stress for a lot of their lives. It can cause a heart attack, for instance. It can have so many negative effects on your health. So try to deal with your stress in a positive light and seek help when you need it. And then there's an old saying, which is true grit. So having true grit means, again, perseverance, not giving up. And whenever I think about true grit, I always think of the two Western films where they're having to go across the Western plains to try to rescue somebody who's been kidnapped, if I recall, but I'm not overly certain because I've not seen the movies for many years. But again, it's about not giving up. It's about having that persistence to be resilient and being stubborn to have that resilience. And stubbornness can be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing, and I've probably got a little bit of both, but that's just makes me who I am. And then also having that self-discipline, which I could probably do a bit more in my life, to be fair. I'll put my hand up to that. But learning self-discipline, and I'm always admiring people who have served in the military because they have a tremendous amount of self-discipline. But why do they have it? It's because they're taught it in the military. So having self-discipline, and also having self-discipline about food. Today I was getting some milk from a shop, and I had to take 2 cakes out of my bag, and I put it down on the counter, and I bought 6 pints of milk, which will last me a week. Because I like my tea and my cereal in the morning. And I put the cakes down and said, well, make sure I don't forget them, because I don't want you guys to eat my cake for free. And the guy behind the counter says, well, I've got self-discipline, so I won't eat them. And I thought that was quite wonderful and very ironic, considering that I was going to film this video today. So having that self-discipline is a wonderful thing as well. And I can certainly do a little bit more self-discipline in my life. So you never stop learning, you never stop adapting, and you never stop really learning these things. And the day you stop, well, you shouldn't stop. You should always continue to learn. And the day I stop is the day when I die. Hopefully in 50 years from now. And then, of course, the key phrase of keep going is also important. Again, it's that resilience. It's just another word, phrase for it. You keep going, you keep moving forward, you keep pushing forward. However you want to describe it, you just don't give up. And it reminds me of the story about the guy that had KFC, Colonel Sanders. And when he left the army, if he was in the army, this may be an urban myth, I don't know, but the old story goes, he left the army, or he got sacked from a job, and he couldn't find anything to do. So one day he sat down and he thought to himself, what is the best thing that I've got? What is the one valuable thing I've got I can sell to make money? And then he remembered his recipe from his grandmother for Kentucky Fried Chicken. So he thought, well, yeah, that's the best thing I've got. So he went to restaurants and to another restaurant and to another restaurant and to a cafe, and he went to all these places and all these manufacturers of food trying to sell this recipe, and nobody wanted it. He tried hundreds and hundreds of places to try to set up selling his famous mother's recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then eventually, after hundreds of times of trying, he found somebody who would take the chance. And now look, one of the massive food chains in the world. And I could also relate it to the story about Edison inventing the light bulb. So one day a reporter said, well, you've invented hundreds and thousands of light bulbs and everyone has failed. This is before he invented it and got it working. And the reporter said, well, how does it feel like to fail? Well, Edison turned round, he said, well, I haven't failed. But I've proven that all these methods of inventing the light bulb don't work. But eventually I'll invent one and it will work. And again, that shows you resilience and it shows that not giving up. And where would we be if Edison did not invent the light bulb? Whether he did or not is another questionable thing. And no doubt Nikola Tesla probably helped in the process, but that's another of world and life's conspiracies. So yes, it's about not giving up, and that is what I want you to get across from this video, that if you keep pursuing your dreams and you don't give up, eventually you'll get there. Whether it's writing a novel, becoming a famous musician, or being a megastar on TikTok, if you keep pursuing and keep doing what you're doing and keep positive, eventually it will pay off. So have that mindset of having that resilience and that positive way to move forward and to not give up, to have that emotional strength, that mental toughness to adapt to the adversity of life, and you'll be a stronger and richer person for it. And your personality and who you are, what makes you you, will be a stronger person. And that is what the message of this video is about. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a like and a subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye.